I'm Sasha DeWitt, and this is the Studio Notes Podcast, the show where I chat with artists about the real-life stuff of being an artist. Hi, and welcome to Studio Notes with me, Sasha DeWitt, and today's guest, Hazel, also known as Nocciola The Drawer. Hazel is an illustrator, muralist, and adventurer. And first, I'd like to ask you about your name, Nocciola The Drawer. Does it have a special meaning to you?
Yeah, so it really does, because it's actually Italian. So it means hazelnut. And when I was living in Italy, my name was quite hard to pronounce. And I'm someone that loves to travel and also communicate with people. So it's much easier for me to use the name Nocciola, which means hazelnut, for, to have that extra connection with people. And so then I ended up making my artist name Nocciola The Drawer.
I love it. And I love when you sign your name on things, you have the nice, lovely splat, and you have Nocciola The Drawer in there as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite long, so I didn't really think about that when you're signing a mural.
If you had it to do again, do you think you would just have it be one word, just Nocciola, or?
No, for me, the drawer is important as well, because everything that I do starts with drawing. And for me, I think drawing is such a gateway into the creative industry, and everyone starts with drawing as a child. So for me, that was important to be part of my name as well.
Oh, that's really wonderful. And that takes us on to my next question, because I'm really fascinated with people's artistic journeys and how they get into the creative industries. So I'd love to hear about how you began. Was it in your childhood? Did you go to art school, or are you self-taught? So I'd love to hear about those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it's always so interesting, because it's always so different for everyone. And I don't think there is a linear path to get into the creative industry. I always drew as a child. I always was interested in creative things, just the arts in general. Like tried every kind of dancing, like every kind of sport. And then I tried every kind of creativity. So, and my mum, I remember she taught me how to draw ballet shoes, and then that went into trying to draw every kind of shoe. And then from there, I did like pottery making, and I was just always interested in the creative, well, not the creative industry, just being creative.
Yeah.
So I knew that it was something that I wanted to do, but it was actually an art teacher. When you choose GCSEs in England, I was actually quite nerdy at school, so I quite enjoyed every subject. And I think it's a thing of being curious. So I just really enjoyed everything. But there is that kind of pressure to do things you're good at. So I was actually not going to choose art for GCSE, because there were certain blocks that you had to pick. And, if it's not in that block, it clashes with another class, etc. So, but at parents' evening, my art teacher said to my parents, Hazel should pick art. And that really helped me, because it's not like I was exceptionally good at art. I just loved creating. I remember watching changing rooms when I was younger, and I'd design rooms. I would get felt tip pens and make the floor layout of a hotel or a apartment for my Barbies, because I didn't have a Barbie house. And I was just always doing something creative. And then, that was, I feel like, a real turning point, and her believing that I should take art. And then from there, I flew with it. I just really enjoyed, and she was a really great teacher, because she really encouraged experimenting. And so I experimented with everything when I was at school, all through GCSE and through A-level, and just really enjoyed it. My artwork wasn't necessarily stuff people liked. When people came into the art rooms, they weren't like, wow, that's an amazing picture, because it was really about the process and experimenting, rather than some people that created a nice looking picture. So that it was really my curiosity. And then I decided that I wanted to be a fashion designer. I was a teenage girl. I was spoken the language of clothes. I experimented with what I wore, and I always couldn't understand when people just always wore black. For me, it was trying things, another way to be creative. So I think that's what drew me to wanting to do fashion design, because it was a way that you could be creative. I'm always interested in inspiring and empowering women. And I even, as a teenage girl, I was like that. And so I knew I wanted to do women's wear. Didn't know anything really about fashion, about the fashion industry. My mum made her own clothes, so she taught me how to sew, and I'd make clothes for like my dolls when I was younger and things like that. But I decided I wanted to be a fashion designer because it seemed like a really good way to be creative. And actually, I didn't think an artist or illustrator, I didn't know they were jobs that you could have. So I decided I wanted to be a fashion designer. And I asked my mum this the other day, actually, because at 16, my parents lived in Belgium. And I was like, I need to go to London. There's a week course for 16 to 18-year-olds to try fashion school for a week and see if you like it before you like apply to university. And it wasn't at the London College of Fashion, it was Central St. Martin's. And I was like, I have to go, I have to do it. And thinking back, I was like, how did you let me just go on the Eurostar by myself and spend a week in London? Like, that's mad. And my mum said that you were really persistent. You wouldn't let us not let you. Like,
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of your personality as well. You're quite a go-getter and you just go and get things done and just focus. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. When I've got something in my head, like I want to do it. So I did that week and I really enjoyed it. I met loads of other people. That is amazing too. And I love being in London. And then I decided then, yes, I definitely want to study fashion. But on that course, she said, if you come here to Central St. Martin's, it's survival of the fittest. You won't see your tutor and we won't teach you. You just have to learn to survive. And I was like, I literally know nothing about the fashion industry. I want to learn about it. I want to learn how to work in it, how to do it. And that's not going to work for me because I've come straight from art. Like I just did art A level. It wasn't design or anything like that. All my stuff was like painting or photography or clay. Like it was all different things. And I didn't know how to be a fashion designer. And so I decided to go to Northumbria University. For me, that was in the northeast of England. It's where my mum's from. And it wasn't really that swayed it. It was the course. It had a year in industry, like in the middle of the course.
Wow, that's amazing because not a lot of art courses do that.
Yeah,
wow.
So that's like I was set. I mean, I applied to other ones as well, but that's the one that I really wanted to go to because I was like, oh, so they actually teach you like how to pattern cut, all that sort of thing. But also there's a year where you have to go work in industry and it's like a requirement of the course. And it's a bit strange because it's like halfway through your second year and halfway through your third year. So it doesn't really fit with like the normal university timings. You're kind of completely out of sync of everyone else that you make friends with at university. But I knew I wanted to do that. And it was actually my art teacher that reason why I got in. So I got invited to interview and it's in person where you take your portfolio. And it was actually during like my school holidays and my parents had already booked my flight to go back to Belgium because I went to school in the UK to see them. And so I was like, I can't go to the interview. And I was like, and you'll know this from the things that I say and things, I sell myself. Like I'm the one that sells. And I was like, my work, like I wasn't stupid. I wasn't thinking I'm an amazing artist. I'm going to get in to everything. But I was like, it's me that sells my artwork. I'd been to a couple of interviews with other universities. And I was like, it's me telling them like the meaning, showing the passion, my enthusiasm that really gets me the places out on the courses. If I just send, it was that time, it was CDs. If I just send my CD to them, like they're not going to get it. I'm not going to get in. I'm not going to get a place. And I was like, there's no point in even sending it. And then my art teacher was, just send it. So I sent it and I got in, I got offered a place. And so I ended up going to Northumbria for fashion design. So that was quite a long story to that point.
I mean, you know, how you went through GCSEs and did your A levels and then ended up doing fashion design. And I loved that, you know, that week that you spent at Central St. Martin's, that they were so honest about what their program had to offer and that you could see the benefit of going someplace else and someplace that had, you know, very practical year in the industry. So actually, even that journey alone, you know, like not a lot of people get to do that. So that's really interesting to hear about.
Yeah, I know. I think that's like, it's so good because I probably would have applied to all the ones in London because you think it's the center of fashion, that's where I need to be. And so yeah, I was really glad that I ended up doing that week, because I wouldn't have known. Probably would have just, if I'd got in, I would have just turned up in London and been like, ah.
Yeah, maybe been overwhelmed even
Yeah.
by it all. And then what's interesting, so you went to study fashion design, and I can see some of that in your illustrative work, like how that has translated. But how about for you, like that journey from then studying fashion design to what you're doing with your illustration work?
So that's not as a straight path as what I've just described.
It never is. It never is.
It's a couple of loops around the world and a million other different jobs. But doing the course, like, I loved the year in industry. That was like my favorite. I ended up working for 3 different brands, very different. So I did 3 months in London, working for a high-end designer, catwalks, things like that. Then I did 6 months in the south of France working for Element. So like Billabong surfwear, like very much lifestyle wear. And then I did a week at London Fashion Week, and then I did 3 months working for a lingerie brand in London. And so I loved all of that. I literally packed in the whole year. You didn't have to do a whole year. It was like requirement to do 6 months, but I wanted to get as much out of it as possible to know where I wanted to go as well. So I loved the variety of that year, and having the different clients and thinking about the different design directions and the different opportunities. Like I went to Spain with Element and pitched their new collection to the global team, and hearing like, oh yeah, brown works really well in Germany, but it doesn't work well in Spain, and all that sort of thing. And so I loved all of that. But I got to the end of my course, and it was near the end, and I was thinking, what's next? Like, I don't actually see myself as a catwalk designer. Like, for me, I really love relating to people, and my friends didn't get it. Like, catwalks, I loved Alexander McQueen. Like, I loved the storytelling and the like kind of event of the catwalk and all that part, but none of my friends got it. They're like, I don't understand, I've never wear that. And I really like relating to people, and just the people around me did not relate to that at all. And then I didn't really like being a high street fashion designer. It just seemed like you were churning out similar stuff. It just didn't seem right for me either. And I was like, oh, I've done like all this, like what next? So I actually went to a talk at at Northumbria University. There was a woman that had come from Kingston University. She'd set up a new master's program there, and it was about like interdisciplinary design. Like, I did my dissertation on how fashion becomes the skin, and like how like kind of really radical forward thinking of fashion and the body like coming together. And I loved that. And her program was kind of a bit about that as well. And so I'd never thought about doing a master's. For me, like, I didn't go to do a foundation course or anything before my fashion, because I knew I wanted to do fashion, and I wanted to get, learn so I could get to industry quicker. And so I'd never thought about masters, because again, I'm not super talented. Like, it wasn't that I was creating these amazing things that, I was gifted or anything, but I'm super enthusiastic, really hardworking, and like lead with passion when I create. So yeah, I thought master's programs were only for like super talented people. And so she talked about her master's program, how you like also work with different brands, like not fashion brands, like other industries. And it really intrigued me. And I was lucky enough that my dad worked in the military. He worked for NATO. And if you do continuous education, like your child does continuous education, you get funding for it. But if you take a year off, like, you can't do any more. So I kind of saw that opportunity. I was very lucky. And I thought, well, she talked about this. I don't imagine myself going into high street or high end. I still want to do something with fashion, but I don't know what it is. And this program seems so interesting. So I managed to get the funding for it, and through my dad's work. And then I did it part-time. So down in Kingston. So I had a job as well. So I worked as a bridal consultant in London.
Yeah. The jobs we take, right?
Yeah. I didn't know anything about wedding, but I knew a lot about women's bodies and how they feel in clothes. And that was really about a big part of that job. So I did that and my master's program at the same time, and that really escalated to where I am now. Not again from there, it's not a straight path, but I can see how that set me up for where I am now, because while I was there, I saw that there was an entrepreneurial program at the business school, and this is like an added extra. You don't have to. It's not a paid program. It was like you sign up for it, like after school sort of thing. And so I signed up to the entrepreneur program, and there's a lot of business people, a lot of business minded people, which I'd never really been interested in business. I never thought about doing business studies or anything like that. But I was seeing how people were taking ideas to businesses. And we had quite a few people come in on the course as well that were talking about making your own job, and these sort of ideas, which I hadn't really heard before. And then also working on the program, it wasn't so strict, the structure of the program. Like a lot of people did do catwalk collections at the end, and there was a catwalk and everything, which I didn't do. But a lot of the modules were very experimental, so you could end up doing completely different things. And I actually did a mural project for one of my modules, which was like with a scent company. I didn't actually get that good a grade because they said, well, you didn't actually do the mural. I was like, how do you do a mural? Like, how do I find a wall to paint? Like, I just did the design. Like, I didn't know how to do that. And I was thinking, what, you expect me to find a wall? And although this still didn't click and it still didn't go from here, how I ended up doing murals, but I was always obsessed with street art. I love to travel. London has a huge street art scene, so I love being down there and getting to know the artists that paint there, and well, their work, not the actual artists. And then I've just always been obsessed with street art, and the connection of all of that stuff then becomes a very long journey to where I am. But looking back, I can see how those things influenced.
Yeah, you can see sort of the points along the way that influenced where your art is now, and the murals. I love that you had something that was like a mural project without a mural, and didn't know, because that's sort of what the reason why I want to have these conversations is because I think a lot of people see a barrier like that. Well, how do I do a mural? How do I find a wall? How do I do this legally? You know, that sort of thing. How do I get started? And so it's really nice to have conversations with artists who are out there doing this, because it's going to help us share information with each other, so that, you know, maybe somebody else sitting at home thinks, yeah, I want to do a mural too. They can go to your YouTube. They can find out a lot of wonderful ways about how to get started. And we'll talk about that some more in just a little bit. Some of the things that you just hit on, though, that I really found interesting. I mean, one thing is that I can see a link between your dissertation and the work you do now, because you were talking about clothes as skin. And I know that when you draw your female figures, they tend to have like patterns on their skin, basically, a lot of the time. So I find that quite fascinating to see that link.
Yeah, exactly.
And another one is you speaking about talent, and you saying, well, I don't have talent, but I have perseverance and motivation and passion. And I personally believe that is more important. I think we have such a weird ideas around this one word, talent. And you see so many people who are beginners and they feel like, I'm not talented enough, or I'm not this enough. And really, for me, and what I see is talent is nothing to do with it. Talent is usually hard work. Somebody who has drawn, you know, hundreds, 10,000 hours. But it is also, talent is really about passion and just about getting out there and doing it. So I find that really interesting that you yourself are like, well, I'm not talented, but I am passionate and I persevere.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you can see sometimes with people that paint and they're so talented, and you don't know whether it's because they've spent so long or whether they are just naturally gifted. But someone came up to me the other day at a street art festival and was like, how do you do this? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, art, like, how do you create? And she's like, I was like, anyone's an artist. She's like, no, like, I could never do this. And I was like, you can. Like, it is just about, you know, where you put your interest. It's like any goal that you want to put in. Like, even if I'm not drawing, I'm always like consuming art. So I'm always looking at other artists' work, going to exhibitions, walking the streets to find street art pieces. So even when I'm not drawing, like I am thinking about visuals, and then that all adds to my work.
But I love, again, it goes back to this, going back to this idea of talent. I just love that, so everything's feeding into this. And when I look at you, of course, I think you are so talented, because I think you have a really wonderful way of being able to simplify things into a beautiful graphic form, like how you see the world and how you translate that in your murals and in your artwork. To me, I say, well, that's talented, because I think, well, I couldn't do that. So I think talent is always just thinking, well, I couldn't do that, but she can do that, so therefore you are talented.
Yeah.
So to me, you're very talented.
But I think like my talent is knowing myself. So, and also understanding people. And a lot of that came from all the journey between my master's and now. So I am a people person. So often as artists or creatives, you spend a lot of time by yourself, drawing, practicing, learning. So it can be quite solitary, but I love people. Like I love being surrounded by people. I get off like their energy and things like that. So like I love being the bridal consultant while I was also working on my master's, because it's really about personal relationships, seeing how their relationship is with their body, how clothes can transform how they feel, how other people's perceptions of what you should wear. And all this is around weddings, but all of the things that I'm saying is about any day. Like it's not necessarily wearing the wedding dress. Like I really believe in like clothes transforming how you feel. And the same with color, which is why I use a lot of color in my work. And like you said, yeah, I do patterns on the body. So it's crazy that I actually used to make clothes, when now I'm just like, I just draw it directly onto the body. But yeah, so why are you saying that like talent is understanding what my mission is, what my vision is, and how I want to translate that into something in artwork. And I think that is what is the hardest part about being an artist. I drew so many other people's styles. When I was talking with another person that went to university, same university as me, but like decades before. And I said, like, when we were doing fashion illustration, it wasn't digital. Digital was just coming then. So I wasn't creating anything like really graphic-y, but also it was so much about like white space or moody looks. And now everything that I do is filled with color and super smiles and expressive. And I think that's like, kind of going against what they were kind of trying to teach us to do in fashion. And the same with like when we drew fashion illustrations, it was like make sure that they're I can't remember how many heads. It was like it's basically make them long and thin.
Right. Okay.
It was like each thing that you draw on for your design illustration should be 10 heads high or something, which isn't the proportions of a normal person. So everything that I do now is normal proportions. Sometimes there might be a bit not exact, but it is much more actual people proportions. And so I can see how that all feeds into what I do as well. But it's funny because for my art A level, I actually did a giant piece of artwork. And I don't know how I got to that point, but it was like lots of colors. It was a huge piece. I had to do like a step ladder. It's kind of the size of a door. It was paint and collage, and there was so many colors. I mean, there was a lot of black in there, which now I don't really use black, but there was every other color in it. And it was a woman, like naked woman, diving into water. And these are all things that still feed into my work now, but I just didn't realize then that was the way. And I think it's because my art teacher was so like into experimentation and trying things, but then in fashion school, it was very much trying to fit into a certain style. My final collection isn't anything that reflects what I do now, but I did do a project straight after that year in industry, and that would be my style. It was super colorful, all like these kind of frills coming out, and then obviously maybe in my final year I was so like under the stress of like this has to be good, or this has to be fit into the industry somewhere, that it came out as something that wasn't quite right. So when I did my master's, my final project for my master's, I created a lingerie brand. This is from like, I put in an idea to the entrepreneur program. There was a prize that you could win money for your ideas. And so I pitched my idea. And then I ended up doing it for my final project. So I ended up like getting funding from investors for a lingerie brand. And my brand was very much around women. It was a city girl with a sense of adventure, which is probably like me as well. But it was about how each person is different. So I had 4 different ranges in one collection, whereas normally a collection is like all one theme throughout and they're just variations. But this was about saying how there's 4 different things that can be like 4 different people that can be different, 4 different collections in one season, and the individuality. And it was based on places in London. So it was like different areas and how like that culture in those little areas inspired the lingerie collection. So I feel like that reflected my work so much better than what I did on my bachelor's. And then I was suddenly a business owner, but I was like 25, 24, and I was like living in London, and I then saw my future like, I'm going to be in London poor for the next 5 years, trying to make this work. And I'm going to be like stressing over that stitch isn't right, that seam's not right, that color doesn't match. Like, and I was like, so even though I was in a better place than I want to be, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't the kind of job that I want. I quite like the service job of like being a bridal consultant, where you're like helping people. And although like I'd set up a whole thing about like a community of women around the brand, like I saw the whole vision for it, I was like, I want to be having an adventure right now. This isn't exactly what I want to do, even though I'm really happy with it. So I gave all the money back and booked a one-way ticket to Australia.
Oh wow, well, that's amazing. But I can completely understand that, because that sort of business ties you down. Whereas perhaps, so you've booked your ticket, you've gone to Australia. I don't know at what point you started doing illustration, maybe freelance, because that you can travel and do illustration freelance. So what happened? So when you went to Australia, was that part of the journey, or was that just a great time to go to Australia?
It was just like feeling that need to like shake it up. And then like I was always really into like sports. My job at university was actually in the officer training corps, so I was in the military. So I would be spending the week in the studio, like creating patterns, doing design, and then I would spend the weekend in the field running around with like a group of people. And so it was very different to what everyone else on the fashion course was doing. But I always had that like sense of adventure and being outdoors. And so I saw that as an opportunity in Australia to do that. And actually, I didn't really have a plan. I was like, I need to make this work. I had a working visa, so I could work because I didn't have the money to not. But so I kind of worked, and then it was strange. I was really attracted to all of the events jobs, all the in-person jobs. And I worked at so many different events with different communities of people. And this shows kind of how the work I do now, like a lot of my work is around community. I'm just always drawn to like community and what brings them people together. So like I was working at an event that was like a farmer community, or I was working at an event that was Sexpo, which is like a sex community. Like, and all these communities that like I was not part of and I didn't know about, and it was just really interesting. Or like I was working at arts festivals, and I was just really attracted to all these different communities and talking with people and getting to know them and seeing kind of how the visuals completely change from one to the next. So I thought, like I'll try and figure something out creative to do. But in the end, I just like did a lot of adventure and a lot of jobs with people, arts festivals. I volunteered at them as well as working at them, and just trying to soak up as much as possible. And there's loads of street art there as well in Melbourne, which was awesome too. So I actually didn't have a plan. and it's still a long way to where I came now. But I know we don't have all day, so I'll
No, but that's because a lot of what you have spoken about definitely shows me where you are today, because you often, I don't think I've ever seen just this one person on their own. It's usually more than one woman. So usually like multiple figures, very joyful, very like celebrating life. I always think of your stuff as like a celebration of life and a celebration of women and female power. And so I definitely see all that stuff that you were doing and how it feeds into where you are today. And then I suppose thinking about where you are today, I'd love to speak about the mural side of things. So at what point did you get started with the murals, and how did you begin that?
So from the story already, you kind of see that I get an idea and I just go for it. So it hadn't clicked, even though I've literally like gone all around the world chasing street art, walking street art trails, finding the artist's work, taking photographs. I must have so many photographs of street art. I still didn't know it was a job and that I could do it. So I kind of just one day was like, I want to paint a mural. Like, I had in the back garden a grey wall and I wanted some color on it. And I thought I'd been doing some illustrating, but actually it wasn't till I painted that mural that it really solidified my style and knew what message I wanted to put out. And when you said about my work, it's a lot about celebrating. For me, everything I create, I have like a tagline that I follow, like it's all with the aim to uplift, inspire, empower, and celebrate. So if it doesn't fit into those, I'm not going to do it, because that's the message that I want to put out to the world with my artwork. So it wasn't until I actually designed, because also with digital artwork, I was very much a pencil and paper girl. But now I do a lot of my work digitally. And so I digitally designed this mural, and then I painted it in my back garden, and I was like, yep, that's it. Like, I'm going to do this now.
And how did you, like, taking that step, even just taking that step from doing this and doing it digitally and then getting it onto the wall, like, where did you go to learn how to do that? Because I think for me, that is the biggest barrier that I always face. I think, well, I've got an idea, I'd love to do a mural, but then I look at how huge the wall is and I think, well, how do I do that? How do I start that?
So it's actually, my boyfriend was like, oh, on YouTube, I've seen this guy that I think you would love his artwork, 1000. Have a look and see what you think. And I loved it. And it's also from seeing that actually solidified my style as well. Because in fashion school, everything that you're drawing, the people had skin tones. So it was just like skin color. Now everything I do, all of my people are completely different colors. And I use the use of color throughout the whole thing. So I've always been expressive with color, like the way I dress and things as well, and pattern. And so I watched this YouTube video, and he created, his style is different to mine, but all of his figures had different color skin. So like jade green or like purple. And then I was like, wait, I can color in whatever color I want, like people. Like
you're like, it was a big moment.
Yeah.
You're like, it's these times, sometimes these things seem so, they're so simple and yet they're huge. Like, whoa, I can do that. I can just make them any color I want.
It just really unlocked it, because everything that I'd illustrated, I'd always drawn, painted, illustrated, and I was always like trying to capture the shade and the skin color. And that's why, like you said, my style's very graphic. Before, all the stuff that I did was much more in 3D, but now my style is 2D. So it's really about having the impact of the color and the contrast of the color. And I also don't do outlines on my figures, so it's really about making the colors pop to make things stand out. And so watching that, knowing I can color, and it was one of the things that really just like opened my brain, and then I ran with it. And then the other thing was that he was on YouTube showing you how to scale your artwork. So he was showing how to create a mural. And that's another reason why I do the YouTube channel, because that's what helped me and know how to do it. And I literally just watched one of his videos about, I mean, I watched quite a lot of his videos, but I watched one about how to scale the artwork, and then I did it, and I sent a video to him like, thanks so much, I've done my first mural because of that video. And now I have videos on YouTube saying the same, because that's what people don't know how to do. Because if you can draw small, paint small, you can do it big. You just need to know how to scale it. So I use a doodle grid. So you'll see when I share on social and things like that, there's all of that is squiggles in the background, and that's me like doodling. Now, I'm not a natural doodler. I'm much more like probably from the design background, but thinking things through and designing and thinking where things are going to go. So doodling doesn't come naturally to me. So my doodle grids are always very messy, but the whole point is that you put something on the wall to create a pattern on the wall. And then you take a photograph of it, you have the artwork you've designed, and then you superimpose it on there. So then you know at what points, it's basically like when you learn to draw and you learn a grid for perspective. It's a very quick way to do some points of reference on the wall so that you can actually paint big. And it's so much quicker and so much easier. And there's something else I was going to say about that, but now I can't remember what it is.
That the doodle grid is similar to a traditional grid. It's giving you points of reference to place your art. And I think you take a picture of the doodle grid, you overlay the artwork that you want to put in I think you have an app that you...
I have an app. Yeah, I use the app Blend Editor, I think it's called. So I use my phone. So you literally can turn up to a wall. I mean, a lot of mural artists also use projectors and things like that. There's lots of different ways that you can do it, but this is more of a street art way of doing it. And it means that you can paint on any wall and you don't have to worry, you don't have to have electrical sockets, you don't have to have the right reach. It means that you can paint on a wall close up, you can paint on a one that has loads of space, and it's just a really quick way to get points of reference on the wall. So then you can put it with your actual image that you've designed and then actually draw it large scale.
And I have to say, Hazel, I watched the video. It blew my mind, because for so long, that to me was the biggest barrier. I could not figure out, how can I get something big, something small to be something big, and do it so that it's proportions that I have already drawn. And I will say to anybody who is out there, even if you don't want to be a mural artist, it is so worth going to check out Hazel's video on the doodle grid, because it's fascinating. I loved seeing it in action. And of course, I love the mural that you came up with, as well. But I just found that technique to be really powerful, really powerful.
And that's the first time I did it. The video I did about the doodle grid is the first time I did a doodle grid. So it is like, I'm telling you as I'm doing it and as I'm learning. And that's what I want to do with my YouTube channel. But now I've forgotten. There was something important I was going to say about that, but now I can't remember. Oh, about just doing it. But just do it.
Well, I will say, because that's something that I really admire about you, is that you just go for things and you just get out there and you do it. And I think that is very much who you are. You don't let something that is a barrier, like me, I will worry about the blank wall forever. Whereas you were quite practical. You watched a YouTube video, you saw somebody doing it, and you thought, oh, that's how it's done. I like to worry, but you like to get out there and do it. So I think I really admire that.
But it's the same thing of, like if you've got a sketchbook and it's completely blank, like you don't want to draw in it. The same, like you've got a big wall and you don't want to draw it because you're going to ruin it. But the doodle grid actually takes that away. Like if you in a sketchbook, like sometimes I just scribble on a page. If there's nothing on it and I don't know what I'm going to draw, I'll just scribble on the page so that the page is ruined, but it's got something on. You've got a starting point, and that's what the doodle grid helps with. Because you're just literally putting anything on the wall. Some people's doodle grids are so good, and they could be works of art themselves. But for me, I just do it super quick. I'm not a doodler, so it's just to get something on the wall, so then I can start actually drawing. And the same when you said about watch the video, even if you're not interested in doing murals. That's what some of my friends are like. I get it now. Like if they'd seen some of my photos of the doodle grid, or like the process videos of me actually doing it, but they didn't get it. Like they were like, huh? I don't really understand what you're talking about.
It's kind of like the magic behind murals. It's like, it's that behind the scenes stuff, but honestly, I was like, this is like a secret thing that muralists know that I didn't know anything about. So I really did. I loved watching it. And also on your YouTube, I mean, there are so many videos about things that people need to think about that I've really enjoyed watching. So, you know, if I'm thinking about doing murals in the future, you know, there are things about videos about, you know, what you should take with you, and you know what supplies you need, and the thing about, you have one about getting the trolley, and
Yeah.
you know, to help you carry all the heavy stuff. And so there's things like that. And then also, I don't think I've seen this on your YouTube, but you know, I've seen even things like maybe you have to hire like a cherry picker or scaffolding system. So it's even just knowing that those things are possible and how you go about doing some of that as well.
Yeah, you've given me an idea for a new YouTube video now.
Please do one. Well, there you go. Do one on the scaffolding and the cherry picker hire.
Yeah. So the reason why I do the YouTube as well is like I really want to encourage people to be creative and dream big and explore your creativity is what I think when I'm doing YouTube things. Because of that thing, you know, not knowing, or like people having secrets. Quite a lot of like art and the creative industry is kind of a secret hush hush side, even things about payment and how much to charge. Whereas like other industries, like it's really transparent. So I think it's so important to have that as well. So I'm really trying to do that with the YouTube channel. Like it takes a lot of time and effort, and I'm trying to like work as hard on it as I can. But obviously, like painting murals is also a lot of time and effort, and illustration too. But I can see already, like I've been doing it for just over a year, that well, even like you saying that you have watched things. Someone saying, "Oh, thanks so much for the what to pack for your first mural." Like that was really helpful, because it's the same thing for me. Like when I went, it was like, oh, like it's really helpful to have string and a piece of paper, if you, I mean, a pencil, but if you've designed something with circles on it, like it's little things like that. And I noticed that, you know, from those little tips, even me when I'm at a job site, even if it's, I've only got one bag of stuff that I can take with me because it's somewhere that I'm traveling to, like there's key things that I'll have in that bag. But when you said about cherry picking and things like that, yeah, so like scaffolding is, I'm going to do a YouTube video on this now, but about scaffolding and cherry pickers, you need a license to have a cherry picker. So you have to do a course. So I went and did a course with basically it's loads of builders. I was the only girl on the course.
And only girl, only artist.
Only girl, only artist. That's true, because they went around at the beginning and was like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I'm an artist." And like everyone else was like, "Electrician, builder," and so yeah, you go and do that course. And I'm also like, because you're kind of driving the cherry picker, and I don't drive that often. Like I have a driver's license. I actually got it after I moved back from Australia, because it would have been really handy to have in Australia. Before that, I'd lived in a lot of cities, so it was easy to get around. And so, you know, I was very like, I'm again really want to learn. So like, you know, like I asked, can I have another go on that? Because you want to have as much go as possible when the instructor's are there, rather than when you're on site by yourself and having to figure it out. And the same, yeah, about scaffolding. There's different things that you can hire, and it's dependent on whether inside, outside, the height, and things like that, and things you've got to bear in mind. For instance, like I was at a site, it was inside, really, really high. Can't remember the height, maybe 6 meters or something. And they had lots of, it was like an apex, so point at the top, but then it went down, and then they had lots of iron beams. So my scaffolding, I kept having to put up and down because it was like a moving one, to get past the beams every time. So it's like little things like that you have to bear in mind when you're on site.
Yeah, I find the practical stuff very interesting for all of this. And something else I want to talk about is just with the murals. Where do you find commissions for that sort of thing? Because that tends to be like public works of art. So is this word of mouth? People know you do murals, or are you on a website? Or so how are you finding the commissions?
Yeah, so going from doing my own backyard to how do I actually get commissioned for this? So first of all, just loads of cold emails. I emailed anyone that I found online that I thought would be interested. So, you know, like I said, a lot of my work's about female empowerment. So girls' boarding houses, or communities of women in business, or like, so I just emailed loads of the audience that I wanted to create for to ask if they want a mural. Now, you're emailing them not knowing if A, they have the money, or it's something they're interested in. But I think it's so important because you literally never know. Even people that I emailed about a mural, I end up getting illustration work from them. So it's like, it was the right audience for me. It's just they didn't want the mural right then. They were actually looking for an illustrator. So you just never know. So I just think it's worth putting it out there. And you can get a lot of no emails. You get a lot of no emails and a lot of no responses. But in the beginning, that's what I was doing, just like emailing so many different people. And this is why on my YouTube channel as well, I have videos about tips. And it's about like putting yourself out there. Because if people don't know about your service, they're not going to come to you. So I did a lot of that. I also looked for open calls for public artwork. So some things I applied to, when sometimes they have open calls for a project, but not necessarily a specific project. So I pitched the murals and I didn't necessarily get them, but that organization was an arts organization. So then they came back to me when they wanted to commission a mural artist because they saw my work, they liked my work, but it just wasn't right for that project. So it's just like getting under people's radar and knowing what your work is and if it's going to fit for a certain project. So even though you might get no's, you don't know that no might turn into yes either later when they've got the money, when they've got the right project. So just put yourself out there like so much, and it's slow at first, and you're like, yes, I've got one, like, and then also open calls. So sometimes there's open calls for a mural artist. So you'll pitch your idea and your budget, and sometimes they shortlist and then they have interviews and then see if you're the right fit. But it's always best when people come to you and want you directly.
Isn't that the ideal? Is that people know who you are, know what you do, and say, "Hey, do you want to do a mural for me?" And then they have a budget, a good budget, right?
Yes.
You're like, yes, of course.
Exactly. And the same about like introducing yourself to people and following. So my message from all of this, from my journey, is to follow your curiosity. Like, I just think that and go with enthusiasm, because I think that's what leads you to the right place. It's the same, like, I was interested in an arts collection in Durham, and then I found out that there's a creator at Durham University who creates like where all the artwork is around the city of Durham. And then I just was like, would you fancy, like, can I get on a call and talk to you about the collection? Because I didn't even know that there was like, they've got Magritte's and things like that. And Magritte was a big influence in my work when I was younger, and so was Matisse, which you can probably see in the way that I create now. It's that thing of looking back, you can now see it, but at the time I didn't know. And then they're like, oh, cool, so we'll arrange for you to come and have a look at the collection of artwork. And then, a couple of months later, maybe even a month later, it's like, oh, someone's come to me wanting some artwork for their new refurbishment in the gym. But I sent them your portfolio and was like, wait, this might work from what your messaging is. It is a very all-inclusive college in Durham University. Durham University can have a certain look and style of person that goes there. And this college is all about embracing everyone can go to Durham University from any background, from any gender. Like, it's all about the Rainbow College, they're called, and it's all about being inclusive. And they wanted an inspiring, empowering mural in their gym. Now, I'm big into sport. I love adventure, moving your body for enjoyment and coming together as a community, and all inclusive. And also Rainbow College, that means I can use all the colors of the rainbow. So they weren't looking for a mural, but because they contacted the person that's in charge of art at the university, and I'd introduced myself to her, she put two and two together and was like, this looks like it'd be a good fit.
And it's really about those connections. That's what's really nice about putting yourself out there, is you're making those connections in a pretty natural way as well. So it's really nice to hear about making those connections. And then before we say goodbye, I want to know what you're doing in the future, because I do know one really exciting project, which is painting the trains. That sounds so exciting to me. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so this is one final thing I'll say is really important to create your own work, as in set yourself your own briefs. So like I said, I like about women coming together, about movement and enjoying movement. So like I'd done loads of illustrations of communities of women coming together swimming, or women in the sea and things like that. And it was all like digital illustration that I'd done just as like a personal project. And then an opportunity came up to pitch your idea for a wall inside the trains in the northeast on the metro in Newcastle. And they were looking for 4 different artists to create 4 different new contemporary artworks to go within their new fleet of trains, which is like 46 trains. So there's going to be like on each train 2 of each of the artworks. So I pitched to them is it the northeast of England, it's where I'm from, and there's communities of women that Coal Sea swim there. This is perfect for like what I'm interested in and the message I want to put out and the artwork I want to put out. And in my pitch document, I put all of the illustrations that I'd done as personal illustrations. I obviously then had the backup of I do large scale with murals, so I'm very used to working with large scale. And just all of those things came together in this project, and I got the commission. Me and 3 other women all got the commissions, and they've just been revealed. The other day we had a launch for the reveal of the artworks, and my artwork, it's a digital illustration. So again, it's illustration, not mural, but it is a mural because it's on the wall, the inside of the cab of the trains. So they're going to go out next year on the trains, and so people are going to travel every day with these artworks.
And I think that's something that I really love about mural work and what you've done with the trains, is because it is every day, and people who are on the street are walking by and they're being exposed to artwork without knowing that they're being exposed to artwork. And it takes away a lot of that. You know, people who say, oh, I don't go to museums, or I don't do this, or they don't know how to respond to artwork. But here are murals out in the public for people to respond to.
Exactly. And that's why I love working in public spaces. Like for me, I'm not really that interested in painting murals in people's houses. It's not about painting anything. For me, the message is so important, and the place, that it's a community place. So out on the public, on transport. I love to travel. I love public transport and I love painting on the street as well, because it's unexpected art. It's in places that you are not looking for it. And so it can be for everyone.
And I think my other takeaway today is your tagline. I love the idea that you have a tagline. And I love how you have been able to fit, your artwork. Then it gives you a real clarity about what your artwork is about. And I really enjoyed hearing that.
Yeah, that's what also helps me. Once I decided I was getting into murals, I created that tagline so that it would be a point of reference for me. So what is the aim when I'm creating? This is my aim. And also, again, knowing my style, I create bright, bold artwork that combines female characters with lively patterns, all with the aim to uplift, inspire, empower, and celebrate.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today, Hazel.
Thank you, Sasha.
And I'm going to put, I'll put links on the podcast page to your YouTube and also to your Instagram. And because I know that your Instagram, the spelling is a little bit different than how it's pronounced. So Nocciola The Drawer. And then I'll put those links down below so that people can find you.
That would be fabulous. And I look forward to hearing all the other ones you create too.
Yeah, I'm excited to interview and hear them. So thanks for being my first interview.
Oh, it was awesome. I loved it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Studio Notes Podcast with the fantastic Hazel, also known as Nocciola The Drawer. I just love her murals and urge you to really click on the links below so you can find out more about her. If you like this episode, please rate and review and subscribe, as it really helps others to find it. And of course, thank you so much for listening to Studio Notes with me, Sasha DeWitt.